This is Mario Mucalo. He was born in Split, but he says that Zagreb is better. That's why he lives here now. Uh, his talk is Debugging Communication. Let's give him a warm welcome. This is the largest audience he's ever had a talk for.
Hello, everybody. As you all heard, I'm also Mario. Today I'm going to be talking about communication. However, before we get into the details, I would just like to say what got me here. So I first worked in a company called Lemax. They build software for tourism. And one of my roles there was to talk to a lot of tourist agencies, people there, to figure out their business processes, to figure out how our solution maps to their business processes, to figure out what was missing, to communicate this to developers, to communicate the developer solution back, and so on. The next company I worked at was TopTal. I worked there as a director of engineering for 3 years. And one of my roles there was also to communicate with clients, figure out their technical needs, help them map out what they already don't have, and then find suitable talent for their needs. And today I work as a CEO in a company called Intelligence, where I also work as a developer. It's a small two-man company. So as you can see, I've spoken a lot to clients, I've spoken a lot to developers, and in my previous experience, I have found quite a few projects that broke down on communication. So a communication is a big issue in working in any type of project, whether it is remote, whether it is on-site. It's a really big thing, and people pay too little attention for it because they think it's a thing of common sense. So first of all, let's define what communication is. It says that it's a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of signs, symbols, or behavior. And as you can see from this definition, there are different kinds of communication. It can be verbal, it can be non-verbal, it can be body movement, it can be written, it can be video, audio, whatever. We are not going to get into this during this talk. However, the problem with me was whenever I worked, I ended up in quite a few projects that went down due to bad communication. We mark them as bad communication. This is the reason for the problem. However, we never really figured out what was bad communication, what was good communication, how we got there, and things like that. I'm an engineer, and I break stuff down. You know, I tear them apart to see how it's working. So I kind of wanted to do the same thing with communication. I wanted to measure what good communication was, how to do it, and so on. And I wanted to figure out where things are going wrong. You've probably all seen this joke for measuring the quality of code. Probably most of you that are developers have worked on projects like this. I know I have. But basically, if you're trying to measure communication, you could use a similar concept. So you could measure the quality of communication by how many "no, but I meant this" happens in a minute. That could be a measurement. So the thing is, the project going down because two parties are not on the same page. Two people are not aware what the other one is trying to do, what the other one is trying to say, and this is something that we need to avoid. So in order to do this, I would like to touch 2 points. The first point is when you're communicating, the idea is that one party is trying to convey an idea to another party. Which is more important, speaking or listening? Very often, in a situation where you are discussing something with your friend, you have your own point of view, and you're trying to back it up with the arguments that you have, with the knowledge that you have, with things that you've previously learned. And if they're having an opposing point of view, then it sort of gets into a debate type of thing, argument type of thing, where they are trying to use their arguments, you are trying to use yours. And in these situations, it's normal that you actually try to win in this debate. And by trying to win, you try to push your arguments as much as possible, you try to speak as much as possible, you try to kill the other person's arguments and win. However, if you do manage this, then congratulations, you won, very good for you. But you haven't taken the maximum out of that discussion. If, on the other hand, you decide to talk a little bit less, listen a little bit more, you can learn about the points of view that other person or that other party has. You can learn about their ideas. You can learn about their thoughts. Okay, if they're wrong, you can dismiss them, but they might not be wrong. They might open up new perspectives for you. They might open up new ideas for you, new points of view on the same topic. So if you ask me, in my opinion, speaking versus listening, listening is more important because it can allow you to take away more things from a discussion. The second thing I'd like to discuss is how do you put value, how do you define a value of communication? How do you put a number to it? For example, if I want to say something to you guys right now, I would think of my idea, then I would think of the wording carefully, I would think of the phrasing, I might even include some word games or something like that. I might put in dramatic pauses. In the end, I might end up with a confident smile or something. And I would give myself 10 out of 10 because I did it beautifully. I did everything that I wanted to say. Everything is perfect. However, somebody, maybe that guy in the third row, wasn't paying attention. Maybe my English was too fast. Maybe I mumbled a little bit. Maybe he didn't understand all the words. Maybe he doesn't have all the required pre-knowledge for something. And maybe they understand only 70% of what I wanted to convey. So is my communication then at 10 out of 10 because I said it beautifully? Or is it 7 out of 10 because they only understood 70%? Or is it somewhere in the middle? This is what I was wondering. And basically, my definition is that the success of your communication can be measured by how similar is what that person walks away with to the idea that I wanted to originally convey. However, the idea that I wanted to originally convey to all the way that that person walks away with is not necessarily a single step. In fact, it can be divided into more steps. And for my need to understand where things go bad, I divided it in 4 steps. First, what you want to say. Second, what you actually end up saying. The third one is what the other party actually hears. And the fourth one is what the other party actually walks away with. And when you take a quick glance at it, in theory, all of these should be the same. And in theory, they are. And as we all know, practice and theory are the same thing, in theory. So where do the differences come from? Let's take the first step. What you want to say to what you actually say. Let's say you're talking about a topic that you really know inside out. For example, Tsapan comes and says to me, I want you to build me a web shop. Now I know everything about web shops. I've built a few of them. As soon as he says web shop, I already have in my idea the databases, the data models, how it's connected to the payment gateway, which are the users, which are the roles. I have it all in my head in a millisecond. And then I try to communicate that to Tsapan, but as I know all the information and I'm so comfortable with it, I start blurting out all information quickly, directly, without actually paying attention to what I'm saying. There, a few mistakes can happen. First, I can assume that he has knowledge of some things that he might not have, so I don't set up the proper expectations. Then, I could, because I'm blurting out, I could be incoherent because I'm saying stuff without actually checking what's going on, just blurting them out. And 3, I can be imprecise. For example, mixing up some similar words just because I assume that they know what I'm talking about. For example, I know that it's not weight, it's mass. They're technically the same because I meant this, but you make these types of mistakes. The advice to avoid this is to take your time, not to hurry. This is much easier in written communication than in oral, because you actually have time to stop and think about what you're writing. But also in oral communication, if you pay attention to this, you can focus and calmly think about what you're saying to make sure that what you actually end up saying is the same or at least as close to what you wanted to say. Now, the next mistake that can happen is between what you actually say and what the other person actually hears. And one of the easiest examples for this is the game of Deaf Telephone. Who here played Deaf Telephone when there were children in kindergarten? All right. So that's one of the examples. You start with a pack of sausages over there, and by the time the messages get there, it's a rhinoceros or whatever. Also, another example could be where a guy says to his wife, "I love you, my darling. You are the most beautiful thing. I love all your flaws. I love all your virtues. I love how you cook me coffee in the morning and know exactly how much milk I want. I love how you snore in the morning when you're tired. I love how you treat your kids. I love the fact that we are together." And she looks at him. "So you think I snore, huh?" So this is a clear example what can happen here. And the thing is that you have to pay attention and you have to think about not only what you want to say, but also how the other person is gonna read it or interpret it and things like that. And here you need to take the developer approach. So don't just cover the main use case, cover all the edge cases. If there is a way somebody can misinterpret what you say, try and detect it, and then try to reword your message to avoid it. The last one, from what they actually hear to what they walk away with, is tricky. So the thing is, people can hear something, but because of their pre-knowledge, or because of their prejudice, or because of some of their attitudes, they can connect the dots in their head completely differently. So they can, I don't know, based on their misinterpretation or misknowledge, they can take your facts and twist them. Based on their previous knowledge, they can completely block out the things you told them because it doesn't work with the model they have in their head. So there is a way that the message here gets broken. And the thing is that it's really tricky to debug because it's actually happening in the other person's head. And unless you're Leonardo DiCaprio and you can go in there and incept new ideas, it's really tricky to deal with. However, my trick here is whenever I feel that somebody didn't get the message that I wanted to convey, I always write a follow-up. Technically, you should always write a follow-up regardless, but if you have a doubt that somebody didn't understand what you wanted to say and somebody's walking away with the wrong message, then it's triple important to follow up with a clear message. We've discussed about this and these are the conclusions. Another thing to take into account is context. So we all come from different backgrounds, with different educations, with different cultures, with different things, and we can interpret messages based on our pre-knowledge and pre-context. And if two people have a different context, it's very easy to get to a misunderstanding. So know about your counterparty, know what context they have before getting into a discussion. If they are really different or if it's unclear, take the time to set the context. If you're not sure about their context, ask them to explain where they're coming from and why. And take the time to learn this. This is very important in order to get the whole flow of communication going. All right? So that's pretty much theory from my end, where things can go wrong. And throughout my experience, I found a few practical ways to get around this. So the first practical way is to proofread everything. Never write, and this is more for written communication, but never write an email and click send. Don't do it. Write an email, put your hands behind your back, reread the email, and think about the steps that we discussed before. Is what you have written actually a picture of what you wanted to say? And can the other person who's going to be reading it interpret it in a different way? If the answer to any of these questions is that it's not the same, then reword it, and again don't send. Again proofread, and keep proofreading until you're exactly happy with the message that you're doing, then you can send it. It is a little bit more time, but especially in delicate situations and in iffy situations, it can be a lifesaver. The next one, keep your language professional. Some of us are looser, some of us are tighter, some of us like to be more relaxed, some of us like to be more uptight. Some of us pretend that they are relaxed but are actually uptight. My advice for a professional environment is to always keep your language official, strict, and professional. If you talk to a relaxed person in a formal way, they will never take that as a bad sign. However, if you find a person or a client or somebody that is really on to formalisms and you start talking to them in a colloquial way or anything like that, they might A, get offended, and B, they might get an image of you that you are not professional. And if this happens, then it's tricky and it will take you a lot of time to fix that first impression that they have of you. So it's much easier to always keep it professional than to get into a situation where you have to fix your image later on. Sarcasm. No, 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 not in any kind of form or shape. So if you're in any type of real-life project, there are several ways that you could communicate to your clients, to your teammates. One of them can be in real life, one of them can be video, audio, emails, different text chats, and things like that. Out of all of these, the only one that actually transfers sarcasm well is live. And even in live situation, it's a thin line between being very funny in a meeting with your remark or being insulting. Also, in chats or in other media, it just doesn't work. So try to avoid it altogether. Look at it this way. If you use sarcasm, you can get 10 extra points for being popular and cool. However, if you make a mistake, you can lose 1,000 points in impression. And anybody who plays poker will tell you that that's not a good game. The next one, minutes are a lifesaver. And here I have a few advice. First, always carry a pen and paper and always write stuff down. Pen and paper, I prefer it over electronic like cell phones or tablets, because when I see somebody writing down something on a piece of paper, I figure out, okay, this guy's paying attention. If I see somebody writing it down on a cell phone, I'm thinking, okay, that guy's playing Clash of Clans and not listening to me. But also, pen and paper is more flexible because you can draw a sketch, arrows, draw pictures, whatever, cross everything out, so it's much faster. After the meeting, take the time to take these minutes, write them up nicely, and send them to all participants. It is an additional task, it is additional 15 minutes, but don't treat it as an additional task. Treat it as a part of a meeting. So if your meeting is set to take 1 hour, in your calendar, block a slot of 75 minutes, and right after the meeting, do this and send it. Some of you might complain that people are not going to read those minutes, and you might be right. People don't read minutes. But there's a trick how to use this to your advantage. Don't say, please confirm that these minutes are okay, best Mario. Because then they can say, okay, I've never read it, I've never confirmed, why do you think they're okay? Use something like, hey, I'm going to be working according to these minutes. If you don't agree with something, let me know. So make sure that the minutes are implicitly confirmed and only explicitly can be denied. That way, if somebody says, I have never read that email, well, good for you. In minutes, make sure that all the tasks are clearly defined, are assigned to a person or team or people, and have a deadline. So task ABC needs to be done is much worse than task ABC needs to be done by Mario by Friday. And ideally, always have somebody that will take those minutes and put them into Jira, Asana, any project management tool that you're using. And the last one that I'm going to give you is mind your tone. So there are going to be conflicting situations. In these conflicting situations, your communication skills are going to be challenged. Make sure to think that your attitude needs to be directed not to assigning blame, not to getting out of blame, but to solving the problem. So always keep a positive attitude in which you want to solve the problem and help your client solve the problem, help your team solve the problem. Don't lose your temper, don't lose your voice, don't shout, don't be aggressive, don't be defensive. Keep calm, have arguments for everything you say, have supporting points for everything you say, and in the end, remember that the idea is we are now in a problem, let's solve the problem, let's not assign blame. The idea is to solve the problem, so keep your tone down. So these are the few things that actually helped me in my career, where I dealt with clients, where I dealt with developers, where I dealt with various teams. And I hope some of them can help you in your future work. And if you have any questions about details or methods how this can be applied, I'd be happy to answer them either now or over a beer. Thank you.
I'll just tell you now, there's no beer for at least 10 more minutes, so. Questions? No questions. Everyone's perfect communicator here. Good for us. One over here.
Yeah, hi. Do you have any advice on shortening the meetings? So when a client says, "Hi, I want a web shop," how do you keep the meeting in under 8 hours?
That's a good question. A good way to have this, and especially if it's a regular meeting, is to have it structured. For example, when I was working as a director of engineering in TopTel, we had meetings that were predefined in a way that we knew what was the type of meeting, what's going to happen. And then it's easy because you just have to give out your report. For example, we had to go through all clients and see where we are in them. But then you know, okay, this is the list. Whoever's client is on the row, they're speaking. They have to keep it below, I don't know, 10 seconds. And then we go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. If there are issues, we discuss them. But basically, it's like that. And it's always like that. So you can come prepared for that meeting, and you have to come prepared for that meeting. And having that type of structure is also helping you be more focused on the actual problems and more focused on the actual details. If you come to a meeting like, today we're going to meet and discuss this problem, that can last for 8 hours. But today we are going to meet and discuss this problem by first discussing this, where we have to decide this, by discussing this, where we have to decide that, by discussing this, where we have to put everything in a tool. If you have that type of structure, the meeting is going to be much more disciplined, and it's going to be much more on topic, and hopefully end up faster.
Other questions? Over here. Really getting exercise today.
The suspense is awesome while he gets to the...
Just a question, do you ever give up? Like, how many like miscommunication things do you tolerate until you say, they just don't understand me?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Yeah.
So
No.
the question, if I understood the question is how to approach a situation where even after all your efforts, somebody doesn't understand you?
Yeah, like after how many attempts do you give up?
I don't think there's an exact answer to that question, but from my personal experience, I either don't give up until I'm happy with the answer, or I give up and tell the person, hey, at this point, I cannot understand you. If we cannot get to the same page, then I'm not the person that can help you with your problem. If we cannot get, I'm going to put all the effort that I can into understanding your problem or your point of view or whatever we're discussing. But if after all my efforts and after all your efforts, I cannot understand what you're saying, then I'm not the person to talk to and I cannot help you at that point. And you can convey that message directly, but really be honest, like I have actually put in a lot of effort, you have put in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, this is not working out for us. Maybe you should try somebody else. I don't think anybody would resent you for that. I wouldn't.
I have a question. How deep do you go in your communication with things like specifications? Because a lot of times you're writing something and then you start adding all these edge cases and then you spend, an hour writing an email. So how do you kind of make it efficient but still cover the communication that needs to happen?
It depends. It depends because you're always, you're not going to treat things the same depending on who you're talking to. So if you are addressing one person that you see has problems understanding stuff, then you're going to write a lot more in detail so that you can more easily explain to them. If I'm writing to somebody technical, I could skip some of the basic explanations as I understand that they know the language. This could be a topic for a lecture itself, and it actually might be for next year. But A, through experience, and B, through assessing who you're talking to and lowering yourself to their level or rising yourself to their level.
Hi, Mario. Basically, that was my question. Like, say you're talking with a client. Are you going to try to talk to their like level with them, or are you going to try to get the team, like the client to get the team's lingo and the technical stuff? That was one. And then quicker one, how much time do you spend in email if you're reading and rereading and everything? Cheers.
Well, I used to spend a lot of time with email, but it gets better with time. In extreme cases, an email takes forever. In normal communication, when you're speaking with normal people and you've already laid the context down, it goes much faster because you already got into that routine. To answer your first question, which was...
I took the mic away from him. This is like a critical error.
Yes, correct. Sorry. So you can educate the customer about a little bit of technology if they're interested. But basically bringing technology, if you're a developer, you are a developer. Okay, so if you're a developer, then it's your job to bring the technology to the table. And you don't have to educate the client about how your database is going to be connected and how your classes are going to inherit each other. They don't care. What you have to do is you have to adapt their problem. You have to find a level that they can understand, but not go too technical. So their problem is not that your DLLs are not up to date. They don't care. Their problem is that the thing is not working. So you got to find a level where you can explain. Basically, you lower yourself to their level. Or at least this is what I do. It's not a... It's just what works for me.
Last quick question.
Thanks for the great talk. My question would be your opinion about the instant messaging and client communication for that. You said we should keep in the professional level. How do you move from email and strictly correct way, professional way to instant messaging and kind of being fast in the development of the project? Thanks.
In instant messaging, it doesn't take you that much more time to write full sentences. So writing thank you like thank you is not slower than writing thank you with a U. However, thank you with a U can make you look sloppy. Thank you with a full word will not. Writing a capital I does not cost you anything when you're writing, you know, I'm going whatever. Does not cost you anything. So even in instant messaging, I prefer to use full sentences, full words, and avoid emoticons. But again, this is just me. This is the one that I mentioned. Once you get into a comfortable thing with the client, it doesn't have to be a problem if you use colloquial language or informal language and things like that. But before you actually know who you're talking to, before you are already having a relationship with them in a way, it's much better to assume that you should use professional rather than assume that you can use loose and then get into trouble. Using a loose or colloquial or abbreviations or anything like that does not necessarily get you into trouble, but it could. And in my opinion, it's a risk not worth taking.
All right, thanks again, Mario.
Thank you.